The bite that should have killed. Daniel Carter moved carefully through the ruined city, his pulse steady but alert. Smoke and fire filled the air, and the ground was littered with debris from the recent battle. His mission was clear: rescue any survivors and get out before the enemy forces returned. The planet Zephyr 7 had been a war zone for years, a battleground between human soldiers and the deadly Venkari, a mysterious alien species known for their lethal speed and venomous bite. Many had fought against them, but few had survived. Daniel had seen what their venom could do. Within seconds, a victim's body would freeze, turn black, and die in agony. There was no cure, no escape. As he moved past a collapsed building, his sharp eyes caught movement in the shadows. His instincts kicked in, and he raised his weapon, aiming at the dark corner. Then he saw her, a Venkari woman, injured, breathing heavily, her glowing silver eyes locked onto him. She had deep wounds across her arms, her purple skin covered in dust and blood. Her long, dark hair was tangled, and her sharp fangs glistened under the flickering light of the fires around them. Daniel hesitated. She was dangerous. One bite from her, and it would be over. He had no reason to help her, yet something in her eyes wasn't just rage. It was desperation. Before he could react, she lunged. Her speed was unnatural. He barely had time to raise his gun before she tackled him to the ground. Pain exploded in his arm. She had bitten him. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. His vision blurred. His body tensed, waiting for the horrible, burning pain of death. He could already imagine his veins turning black, his heart stopping, his life fading away in seconds. But nothing happened. The Venkari woman pulled back, staring at him with wide, horrified eyes. Her hands trembled, her fangs still stained with his blood. She stumbled back, whispering in her own language, her voice shaking. Impossible. Daniel blinked, breathing heavily. His arm should have gone numb. His heart should have stopped beating. Instead, the wound where she bit him was already closing. He sat up slowly, confused. What did you do to me? The alien woman's breathing became ragged. She pressed a hand against her chest, as if feeling something wrong inside her. Daniel noticed she was getting weaker, her body trembling. Then a terrifying thought struck him. Her venom should have killed him, but it hadn't. And now she was the one looking sick. What's happening? Daniel demanded. She looked at him, fear in her glowing silver eyes. You survived. Daniel clenched his fist. His body felt strange, stronger, more alert. His heartbeat was steady, but something deep inside him felt different. He didn't just survive her venom. He had absorbed it. The ground suddenly shook. Distant screeches echoed through the ruined city. The Venkari weren't just hunting humans. They were hunting her too. The alien woman tried to stand but collapsed. Daniel had a choice: leave her or help her. His training told him to run, to escape while he still could. But his instincts told him something else. He grabbed her wrist. If you want to live, come with me. She flinched at his touch but didn't resist. For some reason, she trusted him. As the howls of approaching Venkari warriors filled the air, Daniel knew one thing for sure. Something inside him had changed forever. And the Venkari wouldn't stop until they found out why. The mutation begins. Daniel's heart pounded as he pulled the injured alien woman through the ruined streets. The distant howls of the Venkari warriors echoed in the air, growing closer with each second. He could feel the weight of her body slowing them down, but he couldn't leave her behind, not after what just happened. His arm should have been numb. He should have been dead. Instead, he felt stronger. The bite wound on his arm had completely sealed, as if it had never existed. No scars, no pain. And deep in his veins, he could feel something stirring. A strange warmth, like liquid fire moving through his blood. His senses were sharper, his body lighter, and every sound around him was clearer than ever before. The Venkari woman, Zira, was struggling to walk. He didn't know her name yet, but her breathing was weak, and she clutched her side as if her own body was betraying her. "We need to move faster," he said, looking back. She gave him a sharp look, but her usual strength was gone. I can't. Something's wrong with me." Daniel gritted his teeth. The enemy was too close. He made a decision. Without waiting for her permission, he scooped her up and threw her over his shoulder. Zyra let out a weak snarl, but didn't fight him. She was too weak to resist. Why? He had survived her bite. But she was the one getting weaker. Daniel sprinted toward an abandoned bunker ahead, a rusted, half-destroyed human outpost from the early days of the war. It wasn't much, but it was cover, and that was all they needed right now. As soon as he reached the entrance, he kicked the door open and stepped inside. The room was dark, the air thick with dust, and the scent of old gunpowder. He set Zyra down against the wall and crouched beside her. She was shaking, her skin paler than before. Daniel watched in shock as her veins darkened, spreading like cracks beneath her skin. It looked like the same venom that should have killed him, but instead of destroying him, it was draining her. Her glowing silver eyes flickered. "Your body absorbed my venom." Daniel clenched his fists. He had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed made his stomach twist. "Why am I still alive?" Zyra swallowed hard. "Because you are not normal." Daniel let out a breath, trying to stay calm. "I'm human." She shook her head weakly. "Not anymore." Silence hung between them. Daniel's mind raced. If the venom had no effect on him, but was harming her, what did that mean? Before he could ask more, his ears caught a sound. Footsteps. His head snapped toward the entrance. The Venkari were here. A deep guttural voice echoed from outside. "We know you're inside, human. And we know you carry the Venkari traitor." Daniel tensed. His grip tightened around his rifle, but something in his chest burned. A strange, unfamiliar hunger rising inside him. He wasn't just stronger. He was changing. Zyra forced herself to sit up, her breath uneven. "You need to run," she whispered. Daniel ignored her. Something told him he didn't need to run anymore. He wanted to fight. The door burst open. 2 Venkari warriors stepped in. Tall, armored figures with glowing red eyes and razor-sharp weapons. Their black armor shimmered under the dim bunker light. They were bigger than Zyra, stronger, and built for war. Daniel should have been afraid, but he wasn't. The fire in his veins intensified, his muscles coiling like they had been waiting for this moment. The world around him felt slower, his vision sharpening as if his body had unlocked something new. The first warrior lunged. Daniel moved faster than he ever had before. He dodged to the side with inhuman speed, grabbing the warrior's wrist and twisting it with bone-snapping force. The alien howled in pain as its weapon clattered to the floor. The second warrior slashed at him with a plasma blade. Daniel's hand shot up instinctively, catching the alien's wrist midair. The blade stopped inches from his face, but his grip was too strong. The warrior's eyes widened in shock. No human should be able to do that. Daniel's own eyes flickered with realization. He was no longer just human. With a sudden burst of power, he drove his knee into the warrior's stomach, sending him flying backward. The Venkari crashed against the wall, struggling to breathe. The first warrior tried to stand. Daniel didn't let him. He grabbed the alien by the throat and lifted him off the ground with a single hand. The Venkari kicked and thrashed, his claws scraping against Daniel's armor, but it was useless. Zyra watched in disbelief. "What are you?" Daniel barely heard her. For the first time in his life, he felt something primal inside him. Something powerful, something ancient. The Venkari warrior in his grasp gasped out a single word. "Monster." Daniel tightened his grip. Then, for the first time since his mutation began, he made a choice. Instead of crushing the warrior's throat, he let go. The alien collapsed, coughing and choking, too weak to fight back. The other Venkari groaned in pain. Neither of them dared to attack again. Daniel turned to Zira, his breathing steady. "We're leaving." Zira hesitated, staring at him as if seeing him for the first time. Fear, awe, uncertainty. She had thought humans were weak. She had believed her venom would kill him. But Daniel Carter wasn't human anymore. And the Venkari were about to learn what that really meant. Hunted by the Venkari. The air inside the bunker was heavy with tension. The two Venkari warriors still lay on the ground, too injured to fight back, their glowing red eyes filled with shock and fear. They had underestimated him. Daniel Carter stood over them, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. His body felt different, stronger, faster, more alive than ever before. His heart no longer raced with fear. Instead, it beat with certainty, as if it had always known he was meant to survive. Across the room, Zira stared at him, her silver eyes wide with something Daniel couldn't quite place. Fear, awe, or both. "You should not exist," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "No human should survive a Venkari bite. No human should." She trailed off, swallowing hard. Daniel turned his gaze toward her. "And yet, here I am." A sharp guttural sound from one of the injured warriors pulled his attention back. The larger of the two, his black armor dented from the fight, lifted his head and snarled. "You are an abomination." His voice was a low growl. "The High Council will see to it that you are erased." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Yeah, I'd like to see them try." The warrior let out a rough, painful laugh. "They already are." Zira stiffened. "No." Daniel didn't like the way she reacted. "What's going on?" Zira pressed her hand against her chest, struggling to breathe. "They must have activated the hunter signal." Daniel frowned. "Hunter what?" The warrior chuckled darkly. "You are marked now, human. The council has sent the bloodborne hunters. They will come for you. And when they do, there will be no escape." Daniel clenched his jaw. He didn't like the sound of that. "We need to leave. Now." Zira struggled to stand, her body still weak from the venom's strange reaction inside her. "If the bloodborne hunters find us, you won't stand a chance." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Didn't I just take out 2 of your warriors?" Zira shook her head. "The bloodborne are different. They don't just hunt. They erase." A deep, distant roar echoed through the ruined city. Daniel turned toward the entrance, his sharp senses picking up movement in the darkened streets outside. His ears, now more sensitive than before, caught the sound of something heavy approaching. Something fast. Zira's eyes widened in panic. "They're here." Without another word, Daniel grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the bunker's back exit. His enhanced instincts told him they had seconds before whatever was coming reached them. They burst out into the alley behind the bunker, the cold night air hitting them like a slap. The city was eerily silent now, the fires from the earlier battle casting flickering shadows along the crumbling walls. Then the silence broke. A massive figure dropped from above, landing with a thunderous crash in front of them. The ground shook beneath its weight. Daniel's muscles tensed as he took in the creature before him. It was twice the size of the warriors he had just fought. Its black armor reinforced with glowing red veins that pulsed like living energy. Its eyes burned with a deep, unnatural light, and its claws were longer, sharper, curved like blades designed to rip through anything in their path. Zira's breathing hitched. Bloodborne. The creature didn't move immediately. It simply stood there, watching them, studying them. Then it spoke. "You are the one who survived the Venkari bite." Its voice was a chilling, hollow rasp, deeper than any Daniel had heard before. "I was sent to bring your head to the council." Daniel smirked. "You're welcome to try." The bloodborne warrior moved faster than anything he had ever seen. 1 second it was standing still. The next, it was right in front of him. Daniel barely had time to react before a clawed hand shot toward his throat. He twisted his body just in time, avoiding a fatal strike, but the force of the attack sent him skidding backward, boots scraping against the rubble-covered ground. This thing was on a different level. Daniel's fingers curled into fists. The fire in his veins surged, and for the first time, he let himself lean into the change. The moment the bloodborne lunged again, Daniel moved to meet it. Their bodies clashed with a deafening impact. Daniel's enhanced strength sent a shockwave through the air as he struck the creature head-on. The bloodborne warrior staggered back, clearly not expecting that kind of force. For a split second, there was silence. Then the creature let out a low, guttural chuckle. "Good," it said. "You are evolving." Daniel exhaled sharply. "Yeah. Well, I don't remember signing up for that." Zira suddenly grabbed his arm. "We can't win this fight. Not now. We need to go." Daniel wanted to argue, but something in her voice made him hesitate. Zira knew these creatures. She knew what they were capable of. And she was afraid. He hated running, but for now, they needed to survive. "Fine," he muttered, "but I'm not done with this guy." Zira pressed something on a small device strapped to her wrist. A flash grenade ejected from the mechanism and landed between them and the bloodborne warrior. "Close your eyes," she ordered. Daniel barely had time to react before a blinding explosion of light erupted, filling the alleyway. The bloodborne let out a furious roar, stumbling backward as its enhanced vision overloaded. "Go!" Zira shouted, already pulling Daniel into a sprint. They raced through the ruins, leaping over collapsed buildings and dodging wreckage as the night burned around them. Behind them, the bloodborne's roar shook the city. Daniel didn't need to turn around to know one thing for certain. It was already hunting them again. And it wouldn't stop until he was dead, or something much worse. The truth about the venom. The ruins of the city blurred around Daniel as he ran, his body moving faster than ever before. Every step felt lighter, every movement sharper. His senses were dialed up to an unnatural level. He could hear the heartbeat of the alien woman running beside him, the distant sounds of the bloodborne hunter tearing through the rubble behind them. Zira struggled to keep pace, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The bite she had given Daniel had weakened her, and even though she was Venkari, built for war, for speed, for power, she was barely managing to stay on her feet. "This isn't possible," she panted. Daniel didn't have time for questions. Not yet. The bloodborne's roar ripped through the night, a monstrous sound that sent vibrations through the ground beneath them. Daniel risked a glance back, and what he saw made his stomach tighten. The creature wasn't just chasing them. It was gaining. "Left!" Zira shouted, and Daniel didn't hesitate. They cut through a crumbling passage between two half-destroyed towers, rubble falling as they passed. Zira suddenly slammed her wrist device. A second later, a hidden force field flickered to life behind them, sealing the passageway with a crackling blue energy barrier. For a moment, there was silence. Then, boom! The bloodborne slammed into the barrier with terrifying force. The energy wall shook but held. The monster let out a deep, guttural growl, its red eyes burning through the crackling shield. Daniel exhaled sharply, turning back to Zira. "We need to talk." She staggered, leaning against a fallen column. Her normally glowing silver eyes were duller now, her hands trembling. Daniel crouched beside her, gripping her shoulders. "Hey, look at me. What's happening to you?" She swallowed hard. "My venom was never meant to be absorbed." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Meaning?" Zira's expression twisted with something that almost looked like fear. Venkari venom doesn't just kill, it transforms. It was created to turn weak species into something stronger, something like us. Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest. "You're saying I'm turning into one of you?" "No." Zira's voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Something more." Daniel clenched his jaw. He could feel it inside him. That fire that wasn't just heat, it was power, raw and unshaped. His muscles, his reflexes, his senses, all of it was changing, but not into a Venkari. Something else. He shook his head. Then why are you? He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes locked onto her arms. Her veins were darkening, pulsing with something wrong. Zira noticed his expression and sighed. Because the venom is leaving me. And flowing into you. Daniel went still. You mean? She nodded. The venom is choosing you. A silence stretched between them. Daniel exhaled. And what happens to you if it finishes choosing? Zira hesitated. Then, in a quiet, almost resigned voice, she whispered, I die. The weight of a choice. Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. He shouldn't care. Zira had attacked him. She had tried to kill him. She had poisoned him. But she had also saved his life. Twice now. And more than that, she was the only one who understood what was happening to him. Zira suddenly swayed, nearly collapsing. Daniel caught her before she hit the ground. No, he muttered. I don't accept that. She let out a weak, bitter chuckle. It's not a choice, human. It's a fact. Daniel gritted his teeth. Like hell it is. Then he made his decision. Zira was dying because of him. Because her venom had transformed him instead of killing him. Which meant there had to be a way to reverse it. Tell me how to fix this. She looked at him, confused. Fix. The venom, Daniel said firmly. Tell me how to give it back to you. Zira stared at him as if he was insane. That's not how it works. Daniel grabbed her wrist, his grip firm but not painful. Then I'll make it work. Zira hesitated. Her breathing was shallow now. The Venicari once had a cure, a way to stop the venom from transforming someone completely. But it was lost a long time ago. Daniel's heart pounded. Where? She swallowed. The Forbidden Zone. An old sanctuary, deep in the ruins of our ancient world. But no one goes there. Why? Because nothing that enters ever comes back. A deep boom echoed behind them. The Bloodborne was breaking through the barrier. Daniel didn't hesitate. He hauled Zira up, gripping her tightly. Looks like we're going to the Forbidden Zone, he muttered. Zira's eyes flickered with something unreadable. You don't even know what's waiting for you there. Daniel smirked. Guess I'll find out. The hunt continues. The Bloodborne let out a monstrous roar as the force field finally shattered. Daniel didn't wait. He hoisted Zira over his shoulder and ran. The ruins blurred past them as he escaped to the Forbidden Zone. Daniel's lungs burned, but he didn't slow down. The ruins of Zephyr 7 blurred past him as he ran, his enhanced body moving faster than any normal human should. Zira, barely conscious, was slung over his shoulder. Her weight should have slowed him down, but instead, it felt effortless, as if his body had adapted to the challenge before his mind could even register it. Behind them, the Bloodborne hunter roared in frustration. It was fast, too fast. But Daniel was faster. The venom had made sure of that. Zira stirred weakly. You can't keep running, she whispered. Daniel ignored her, dodging through a shattered corridor, leaping over debris as the Bloodborne warrior crashed through walls like paper. The thing was relentless, its glowing red eyes locked onto Daniel like a predator tracking its prey, a predator hunting something new, something unknown. Daniel could feel it, the change deep inside him. The venom was still working through his body, twisting and reshaping him in ways he didn't understand. His vision was sharper, his hearing more precise. He could hear Zira's heartbeat, slowing. Too slow. She was running out of time. They had to reach the Forbidden Zone, the path to the unknown. Up ahead, the ruins opened into a vast wasteland, a place untouched by war but abandoned for centuries. Daniel saw the massive chasm that stretched across the land, a jagged, bottomless void that separated the normal world from whatever lay beyond. The Forbidden Zone. It was more than just a place. It was a legend, a place where nothing that entered ever returned. Zira coughed weakly. You're insane. If we go in there, we die. Daniel didn't slow down. Yeah. If we stay here, We die faster. The bloodborne warrior was still coming, its heavy footfalls shaking the ground behind them. Daniel pushed himself harder, reaching the edge of the chasm. He glanced down. No bottom. No way across. No way back. He took a breath. Then he jumped. Falling into the forbidden. Zira gasped as they plummeted into darkness. The wind tore at Daniel's skin, his enhanced senses spinning wildly as the world above disappeared. The only sound was Zira's ragged breathing and the endless whispering of the abyss below. Daniel braced himself, expecting to hit rock. Instead, a pulse of energy erupted around them. For a split second, it felt like they were weightless. Then the air changed. Daniel's body twisted as they hit something solid, but not ground. The sensation was wrong, as if they had fallen into another place entirely. He groaned, pushing himself up. The world around them was dark, but not empty. Glowing crystals pulsed along the cavern walls, casting an eerie silver-blue light. The air was thick, heavy with something unnatural. A strange energy buzzed in Daniel's bones, making his muscles tighten. Zira groaned beside him. He quickly helped her sit up. "Where are we?" she breathed. Daniel scanned the strange new world around them. The cavern stretched infinitely in all directions, walls covered in symbols that pulsed with alien energy. Zira suddenly shuddered, clutching her chest. The dark veins in her skin were spreading, the venom draining her faster than before. Daniel had to find the cure. He turned to the strange markings on the wall. They looked ancient, older than anything he had seen before. But as his eyes adjusted, something terrifying happened. He could read them. The symbols, the runes, the alien writing. It made sense to him. He wasn't just changing physically. His mind was evolving too. He reached out, running his fingers along the glowing script. The moment he touched it, a voice filled his mind. "You have come seeking answers, but the truth will cost you everything." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. "Who are you?" "I am the past. I am the first. And soon, you will be the last." The truth of the Venkari. The cavern pulsed, and suddenly, images flooded Daniel's mind. He saw the Venkari before they became monsters. They had been human. Not just human. A lost branch of humanity, ancient beyond reckoning. They had once been explorers, pioneers who had discovered a secret too powerful to control. The venom. It wasn't a weapon. It was a test. The strongest who survived were meant to become something greater. But something had gone wrong. Instead of ascension, the Venkari had become trapped in their monstrous forms. And Daniel, he was the first true success in centuries. The first to evolve properly. His bloodline must have carried something long forgotten. Something the venom had awakened. And now, the Venkari would stop at nothing to destroy him. The final choice. The visions faded, leaving Daniel breathless. Zira was barely conscious now, her body too weak to move. He knew what he had to do. There was a way to reverse the venom's effects. But it wasn't meant for her. It was meant for him. If he used it on Zira, he would lose his transformation. He would go back to being human. But if he didn't, she would die. Daniel clenched his fists. The cavern whispered around him. The origin of the Venkari curse. The cavern pulsed with an eerie glow, the alien symbols on the walls shifting as if they were alive. The air was thick with a strange energy, ancient and powerful. Daniel stood frozen, his mind reeling from the visions that had flooded his head moments ago. He had seen it all. The truth. The Venkari were once human. Not just any humans, an ancient offshoot of humanity, long forgotten by history. They had discovered something beyond their understanding, something that had promised them power, immortality, evolution. But it had betrayed them. The venom wasn't just a biological weapon. It was a test, a process meant to elevate the strongest. But instead, it had trapped the Venkari in their monstrous forms, forever caught between evolution and damnation. Daniel was the first success in thousands of years. The venom had transformed him, but instead of twisting him into a monster, it had given him something else: control. He wasn't just adapting to the change, he was mastering it. And now he had a choice. The cavern whispered around him. Choose. Daniel clenched his fists. Zyra lay beside him, barely breathing, her silver eyes flickering weakly. The venom was draining her, leaving her a shadow of what she once was. He could save her. The cure was here. The ancient knowledge in this place held the key to reversing the venom's effects. But if he used it on her, he would lose everything. His strength, his speed, his connection to the Venkari power. If he gave her the cure, he would become just human again. But if he didn't, she would die. The ghosts of the past. A sudden shift in the air sent a chill down Daniel's spine. The cavern darkened, the glowing symbols flickering like dying embers. And then they appeared. Ghostly figures emerged from the shadows, their forms flickering in and out of existence. They were Venkari, but not like Zyra or the warriors he had fought. These were the first ones, the original Venkari, the ones who had taken the venom willingly, believing it would make them gods. One of them, a tall figure with hollow glowing eyes, stepped forward. Its voice was not a sound but a presence, filling Daniel's mind like a whisper from another world. You stand at the crossroads of fate, outsider. Daniel gritted his teeth. I didn't ask to be here. And yet, here you are, chosen, tested. You have survived what others could not. The figure gestured toward Zyra. She will die, unless you make the sacrifice. Return the venom to her. Surrender what you have become. Become human once more. Daniel's jaw tightened. And if I don't? The figure's eyes glowed brighter. Then you will finish what we started. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? You are the first true successor of the Venkari bloodline, the first to evolve without corruption. If you keep the venom, you will become something greater than any before you. Daniel's heart pounded. Something greater. The symbols on the cavern walls pulsed again, and for a brief moment, he saw a vision of himself, not as he was, but as he could become. He stood tall, surrounded by power, his body no longer human, but something beyond Venkari, beyond anything that had ever existed before. And in his wake, the galaxy burned. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. No. The vision faded, and the first one tilted its head. The choice is yours. Restore her, or ascend. A heartbeat away. Daniel looked down at Zyra. She was barely holding on, her breaths weak, her fingers trembling. She had tried to kill him once, but she had also saved him. She had betrayed her own people to help him. She had warned him about the bloodborne. She had fought beside him. And now she was dying because of him. He exhaled sharply. The answer was clear. He reached out, pressing his hand against her chest. The first one's voice echoed one last time. You choose to remain human. Daniel shook his head. No, I choose to save her. The symbols flared to life, a powerful current of energy surging through his body. The venom inside him reacted, pulsing as if resisting. But Daniel forced it out. The energy flowed from his veins back into Zyra, her body shuddering violently as the dark veins in her skin began to fade. Her breathing steadied. Her eyes flickered open. She was alive. Daniel felt his strength vanishing. His vision blurred, his body growing heavy. His senses dulled. The fire in his blood dimmed. He was human again. Zyra sat up slowly, realization dawning in her eyes. You gave it back. Daniel forced a weak smile. Looks like. Zyra looked at him, really looked at him, and something in her gaze softened. You're insane, she whispered. Daniel chuckled. Yeah, I get that a lot. The final trial. A new sound interrupted them. A deep growl. Daniel's eyes snapped up. The bloodborne hunter was here. Somehow, The creature had followed them into the forbidden zone. It stood at the cavern entrance, its massive form blocking their only way out. But something was different. Its eyes weren't just glowing red anymore. They were pulsing with hunger. Zira stiffened. "No." Daniel looked at her. "What is it?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "The bloodborne can smell the venom. They know I have it again." Daniel understood immediately. He had given up the power. Zira had it back. And now she was the target. The bloodborne warrior charged. Daniel pushed Zira out of the way just as the massive beast slammed into him, knocking the air from his lungs. The cavern shook violently. Rocks fell from the ceiling. The entire place was about to collapse. Zira scrambled to her feet, her strength returning. But Daniel was just a man now. No enhanced speed, no inhuman strength, no venom-fueled power, and he was about to die. Zira's eyes flashed. For the first time in her life, she understood what she had to do. She grabbed Daniel, pulling him away as she turned to face the bloodborne alone. She wasn't running anymore. She was fighting. The cavern began to cave in. Daniel struggled to move, his body weak, but Zira turned to him one last time, her silver eyes filled with fire. "Run, human. This time, I'll protect you." The last thing Daniel saw was Zira launching herself at the bloodborne. The power of the venom finally fully awakened in her. Then the world collapsed into darkness. The final transformation. Rubble crashed around him, the cavern trembling as if the planet itself was rejecting what had just happened. Dust, darkness, silence. Daniel groaned, pushing himself up from the cold ground. His body was weak, sluggish, no longer enhanced by the venom's unnatural power. He was just human again. And Zira. He looked up just in time to see her standing between him and the bloodborne warrior, her silver eyes glowing brighter than ever before. She had fully awakened. The venom she had given him, the same venom that had made him stronger, was now back inside her. But something had changed. This wasn't just a return to her former self. This was more. The bloodborne growled, its glowing red eyes narrowing. Even it could sense the shift in power. Zira flexed her hands, her sharp claws extending with deadly precision. Her breathing was steady, her stance poised, not as a warrior about to fight, but as a predator ready to hunt. Daniel had never seen a Venkari move like this, and neither had the bloodborne. For the first time, it hesitated, a battle beyond strength. Then, with blinding speed, Zira attacked. Daniel barely had time to track her movements. She vanished, a blur of motion, appearing behind the bloodborne before it could even react. Her claws clashed through its black armor with terrifying ease. The bloodborne roared in fury, spinning around, swinging a massive fist toward her head. But she was already gone. Zira wasn't just faster than before. She was beyond anything the Venkari had ever been. The venom had transformed her, evolved her into something even her own people wouldn't recognize. Daniel watched, breathless, as she fought. She was playing with the bloodborne now, dodging every attack with a grace that made even the most advanced human soldiers look like children. The bloodborne snarled, its movements becoming desperate. It knew. It was losing. Zira suddenly stopped moving. She stood a few feet away, staring at the bloodborne with an unreadable expression. "I was afraid of you once," she said softly. "Afraid of what you were, of what you represented." The bloodborne warrior snarled, charging one last time. A desperate, reckless move. Zira didn't dodge. She caught the creature's massive fist with one hand. Daniel's eyes widened. That shouldn't have been possible. The bloodborne froze, its glowing eyes widening in shock. Zira's silver eyes flashed, and then she crushed its hand. A sickening crack echoed through the cavern. The bloodborne screamed. Zira stepped forward, slamming her palm against its chest. A burst of pure energy rippled out from her touch, sending the bloodborne flying backward, crashing into the cavern wall so hard that the stone shattered on impact. Silence. Daniel stared. He had never seen anything like that before. The bloodborne didn't move. It wasn't just beaten. It was afraid. Zira walked toward it slowly, each step filled with powerful, inhuman confidence. "You were meant to be perfect," she whispered. "But you are just another failure of our past." The bloodborne let out a weak growl. "I am Venkari." Zira shook her head. "No, I am Venkari." She raised her hand. The bloodborne warrior vanished in a single strike. A new destiny. Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His arms felt heavy, his legs weak, but somehow he managed to stand. Zira turned toward him. Her glowing silver eyes still held the same intensity, but something was different now. She wasn't just a warrior anymore. She had become something more. Daniel swallowed. "So, I guess you didn't need my help after all." Zira studied him for a long moment. Then, in a way that was almost gentle, she said, "You saved me." Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "Nah, you saved yourself." A small smile touched Zira's lips, but it quickly faded. "The others won't accept this. The Venkari High Council. They will see me as a threat now. I don't belong with them anymore." Daniel folded his arms. "So what do you want to do?" She exhaled. "I don't know." For the first time since he had met her, Zira sounded uncertain. Daniel looked around the ruined cavern, at the shattered remains of a history that had been buried for centuries. And then he realized something. Neither of them belonged to the world they had come from anymore. The Venkari would never accept Zira now. She was too powerful, too evolved. They would hunt her down, just as they had tried to hunt him. And Daniel, he had already lost his chance to be like her. Or had he? He flexed his fingers, trying to see if there was anything left of the venom's power inside him. A faint flicker of energy pulsed in his veins, weaker than before, but still there. Not gone. Just dormant. Zira noticed the change in his expression. "What is it?" Daniel hesitated, then shook his head. Nothing. He had made his choice to return to being human, but somewhere deep inside him, a part of the venom still remained. A part of him was still changing. And whatever he was becoming, it wasn't finished yet. Epilogue. The unknown future. The planet Zephyr 7 was still burning in the distance, the war between humans and Venkari raging on. But for Daniel and Zira, that war no longer mattered. They had survived something bigger. As they stepped out of the cavern into the cold alien air, Zira glanced at him. "What now?" Daniel smirked. "We find a ship. And then, we find out what comes next." Zira tilted her head. "You're not going back to your people." Daniel shrugged. "Are you?" She didn't answer. Because they both already knew the truth. Neither of them had a home anymore. They had been changed by the venom, by the war, by everything they had survived together. Now, the only future that remained was the one they would create for themselves. And somewhere in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, something was waiting for them. Something that had been waiting for a very, very long time.